Life is too important to be taken so seriously.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are and wherever you're watching. My name is Matt Pierce. I'm host of the Visual Lounge. Today, we're going to be talking about a play across the communication world of business, and that is that most communication in the business place, in the workplace, tends to get a little boring. And in fact, I'm guilty of this. I think we're probably all guilty of this. But we've got someone here to help us to maybe up our game a little bit, to help us improve a little bit. So let's go ahead and dive in with introducing our guest today. Grant is an employee of Design Laboratory, Inc., currently a consultant and senior trainer specialist at Microsoft, with expertise in video production, voiceover, and generative AI training. He authored GRANTASMS, Created Twisted Words for Cool People, and speaks on creative workplace communication, focusing on neurodivergent employees and entrepreneurs, especially those with ADHD. His diverse background includes role as professional cartoonist and talk radio host, documentary film producer, virtual event manager for Dell, YouTube manager for Fortune 500 companies, and a former SEO business owner. With that said, and with all those awesome things as his background to help us not be so boring, please help me welcome Grant Crowell. Grant, welcome.
Sir Matt of Castle Pierce, thank you for having me and love your new digs. For all those people, it's called the Visual Lounge, so you got to check out the YouTube because this background is rocking. You even got a neon green light right behind you. I mean, it's stylish. It's HGTV level.
I am so fortunate. I'm here at HQ today, getting to use our studio. So I'm not at home where I normally record these. So yeah, it's a beautiful place and lots of flexibility. So, well, Grant, thank you so much for joining me today. And I want to start with where we always start with our first question, which is, what's one tip or piece of advice you'd give to folks about using images or video better in the workplace?
Well, Matt, from my experience, if to summarize, it is just find the story. There are so many tips, and you've heard so many of them. So I don't want to repeat what other people were saying, but the idea of story is, for me, I do four things, especially with how my brain works, which we mentioned ADHD, and I've diagnosed with it 2003, and my brain could go off on tangents, lots of ideas. My thoughts would have thoughts, but to find the story would cause my brain to pause, reflect, create, connect. When you're doing it for business in the workplace, it makes you think about kind of like prompt engineering with ChatGPT. Who's the audience? What's the story you want to tell? How are you trying to creatively connect with them, to communicate with them better, to not be boring? And so in a way, it slows your brain down and it makes you think of visuals. I mean, even people with autism, they will say things like in the work that they do with data on how the numbers jump out to them visually. This is what I do when I work with other people who are also neurodivergent in a different space, and as well as neurotypical. And it might be able to take something boring and make it really engaging to whoever the intended audience that gets them curious and go, ooh, tell me more. So I say, find the story and everything, no matter how mundane you think it may be.
I love that. And I think, sometimes when I have guests come on, we talk about story, and we've had several guests talk about story, right? It gets to this idea. I think people are like, well, wait a second. Why are we talking about story? Let's talk about video. But what is video without some type of story, right? Like, it's so essential to the thing that we're trying to do.
I mean, yeah, you're not going to just have a blank screen or imagine this interview being 25 minutes of Matt Pierce staring blankly at me and me staring blankly at Matt Pierce. Yeah, we're on video, but so what? I mean, it's a tool that can be good or bad. And if anything, like what you will hear people on YouTube and other places, they will not start with the video, or they will start with, okay, what's the idea? How can I first capture people's attention and a hook? And if they don't necessarily have that yet, then they might have to go back to the drawing board and try something else. And it's very easy for folks to get lazy with video. I know, because in the very early years, mentioned my SEO background, I had a very hard time convincing people in the search engine optimization space, this is like 2005, to pay attention to video, to basically say, this is where things are going. Unfortunately, a lot of them did web videos for business that sucked. That was and I mean, we're not just talking technical quality of it looking like something out of Blair Witch Project. It really was just uninteresting, or the whole idea, well, it's free, and they'd talk for an hour and a half and not be respectful of people's time. So even if they might have had a good idea, the ability not to weave a story around it or be respectful of people's time, how to keep things engaging, cause a lot of problems with video. I mean, that's the thing. When everybody can do something, there becomes a lot of noise and a lot of crud.
So Grant, we're here to talk about a topic about just this, communication that's boring, doesn't work well, right? And so some of this is about efficiency, some of this is about effectiveness. But let's maybe start with kind of take a step up here. Why is it, do you think, workplace communication tends to be so boring? It can't, and I want to say that I don't think it's because our topics are always boring. And yes, there are boring topics. There are things that I don't have interest in, and you probably don't have interest in. But it can't be that all communication is. And granted, I'm maybe being overstating this, but like it seems like a lot of just corporate communication is kind of snooze fest, right?
It can be. Part of that might also be well, a good part of it is the culture. If you're doing a place like I worked in pharma as a YouTube manager, hyper restrictive. Whenever a video could be submitted, it had to go through legal, editorial, medical, so much regulation. So because there is so much liability and everyone was suing everyone. So there was that, if a company doesn't have that sense of risk, I wasn't even allowed to send a video like what we're doing here in any form of communication. It had to be just text only. And I even fought to have my images, like in of all places, Snagit in there to explain stuff. So that was the trial that I had, and it could make things seem boring. So I had to be really practical, really creative. And sometimes a creative is not about, get to do whatever you want, but what are the boundaries that you have? So there's that. There's also is people maybe have too many things they're doing. So they're not thinking of how can I do this in shorthand and how can I hit just the most compelling points? Now, I like to say at Microsoft, we have things like Copilot that it can summarize, or you can ask if you have good prompt engineering, how can I make this more engaging for my intended audience? But the other part is most people don't even take the time to learn that, to even say, who is my audience? Or, this is the audience, here's the context, to even think about their audience. So what I like to do in that, and that's why I did a book on that, on neology, which is a fancy way of coined words or coined phrases or coming up with your own meanings for that. Like we hear the term hangry sometimes. That's a portmanteau, combining two things, smushing them together into one. I would come up this for people who are boring. Like at a job where I worked for 3 years for Dell Technologies, we would get in these smart people in their field, but these could be 2-hour meetings and they just go on and on and on. And sometimes their audio quality would be so bad, it could be speaking from a laptop in a kitchen. The acoustics were terrible. So I came up with a word for that called echo nuts, because it was driving me crazy and other people with how bad the acoustics were. But also in the area of IT, I joked to someone else. I said, this is like watching a marathon of The Big Bang Theory without the comedy. It was painful. But I found that if I could give a name to my struggles, it became a mnemonic device that the next time it happens, if I didn't have control over a situation, I could laugh about it and share about it. But why does this happen? Back to your question, is maybe people have so much stuff, but I think they're so used to maybe thinking they have to fill in the gap every time. They might have too many meetings, so they're not pausing. They're not giving themselves enough time to think, what happened? Let's summarize. Now, even with tools like Copilot, which even in Teams, after you record, it can summarize all these things for you. People don't even take the time to look at that. They're thinking, go, go, go. But what I find is it saves you so much time to pause, reflect, and say, wait, why are we doing this? And to ask questions. And sometimes it might be a culture where if questions aren't encouraged, like someone just going, hey, can you tell me what this means? Like sometimes the boredom comes from people speaking in nothing but acronyms and never explaining what those acronyms mean. I remember this very well when somebody was using the term MOM continuously. And here I was, a contract employee, and I asked someone else, what does that mean? And they went, I'm not sure. This person worked there for 10 years. So I just simply, when I'm saying, I'm sorry, I'm a newbie here, what does MOM mean? And they said, well, everyone knows that. I said, no, I don't know that. And they said, minutes of meeting. I said, you mean meeting minutes? And she said, what are you talking about? I said, the standard term is meeting minutes. And she said, well, I'm sure that's what people in the industry say. I said, no, it bothered me so much that I would, even within the company, look up these terms, because we're talking large enterprise companies, and different initialisms can mean different things in different departments. Nothing. It just so happened that people were speaking in shorthand all the time as a way of trying to get through so much more information. I think the other part of it is when people feel like they got to cram so much in a small amount of time that they don't think of how to edit themselves like a storyteller. And in the idea of trying to do so much, it creates cognitive overload and your brain shuts down. So those are just some of the reasons, and it goes back to the storytelling aspect, but sometimes also not being interactive, or reading the room, having other people get involved. If you're just going to be a talking head, then people will zone out, even if you are interesting, because after a while, you're not changing the pace of an interview. Like if this was just Matt Pierce talking about, hey, this is, we're going to talk about not how to be boring. By the way, let me talk for 25 minutes about what's thinking in my head. No matter how great those ideas are, it doesn't provide a change, change in the scenery of things. And even in meetings, that's a very important thing to do. And also, I think the other thing too is people don't know how to use these tools. Like if you are in a chat, like I'm at Microsoft, a Teams chat, and you're not knowing how to use a channel versus a chat space, or learning certain things, or understanding or just tinkering around and playing with it, then like we can have our own avatars, we can have our own backgrounds, we can be playful and play. I call it playful mindfulness. You're having fun with getting things done and having better conversations. If you don't change things up every now and then, it's very easy for people to get lazy. It's like you have to build this like a social fitness muscle.
So there's a lot here to unpack. So first of all, it sounds like some of this is obviously there's legal constraints, and there's only so much we can do about that, right? Like a company of pharmaceuticals are notorious because they have to protect all these things, and that makes sense. But the other thing I'm hearing is it sounds like there's this need that really speed would come from also slowing down. If you want to go fast, go slow kind of mentality. So, and you've thrown out a lot of suggestions. So, okay, we've got, storytelling that we can interject. We can change scenery. We got some interaction. If I'm out there listening to you, Grant, and someone's saying, gosh, this sounds, I've got this problem, or people in my organization got this problem, where do we practically start though? How do we get from like from these ideas to actually implementation of like changing? I mean, sometimes it can be culture change. Sometimes that's a hard hill to climb, but are there practical things people can do?
Well, I always say you can first start with play. Like at first, I say if you're introducing something new, it should be in a safe space. Like have fun with a new communication methodology. Like, for example, I mentioned I love coming up with words for shared frustrations. Like I mentioned when people are speaking in so many acronyms, and I came up with acronym to describe how someone feels. But I could also say I'm acronamaste when I'm finally at peace with all the acronyms. Because the whole idea is to get yourself in a good headspace. And I know I go back to the ADHD theme a lot because it's about problems. And I just use that as a way that's an intensifier. Like a lot of people have these problems. For someone like myself, I become very aware of it because I would have a much stronger reaction without me understanding what I have. So when I am dealing with that PowerPoint that has 20 bullet points and three charts on it and 7-point font, and the person's just reading from it and not offering anything new, I'd call that PowerPointless. I would just try to find a way that could have a laugh and in a situation that is actually happening that people can relate to. And then I would save these things. So if I'm trying to have better communication with folks, which is extremely important because we got to be on the same page when we're transferring information. Otherwise, we miss deadlines. The morale goes down. Worst case situation is we don't get a job and layoffs happen. So there's a real serious business value to this. Is I like to say, what is your goal? How do you envision that if we can communicate better, we would improve on something, even if it's like cut down 50% of emails? Something like that, or even to try to give something tangible of what you're trying to accomplish, and then talk with the people who you work with, whether a coworker, or stakeholders. What are the problems that we have? So everyone's on the same page. But I also think that this is really good in a way of play with purpose. Like even at the pharma company that I worked for, I would have these games of, okay, I had a team of 20, and I'd say, we're going to now first start off with something fun. Talk about something fun that happens in your life that you can have as a group share a story about. Like for one group, it was the word pace trickery, when they were upset because pastries they buy at Starbucks look so much bigger behind the counter than when they ordered one. And that was play. It didn't have anything to do with work. It was easy. And that's where you start with always in things. And then you can get to the work problems. Like I remember one that I came up with a group when other people would volunteer me for stuff. So I said, I feel like I'm being voluntold. which is how that happens to us a lot, is someone else volunteering you for things, or multitasking, when that sometimes becomes an excuse for, oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I had so many tabs on my browser, so it was really more like messy tasking, or multi-crashing, when you do two things at once and they both cause each other things to go wrong. So I would say, now come up with your own things and now share a story. And now, how does this affect your work? Now, that's just one form. There are many ways you could do games. And I think games is a good way of introducing something in a scenario. Like, okay, you had a problem at work. That's a 5. Play, what's the worst that could happen if this was a 6 or a 7? Oh, we all get fired. 8. Oh, my house burns down. And then you're having fun. And that's the key, is you're not feeling a sense of guilt or shame. You are laughing at these mistakes, because we're all going to have struggles. The idea is not to get away from the stress, is to say, here's the stress coming on. I know what to do. I'm able to be in the space of the pause. And I like to say, pause, reflect, create, connect. And since I do that, I find a great benefit of it is a lot of the work I don't have to do, because I'm asking, wait, why are we doing this? I might bring up the fun word. And then someone say, you're right. I think there's a better way. And sometimes to add a lot less stress is to pause, is to breathe, is to ask, okay, why are we doing this? And is there a better way? So less stress, better relationships from not making communication so boring.
Yeah, I love the idea of play and having that safe opportunity to explore some of these things. You also, the idea of kind of expanding it out in terms of connecting it to, hey, we're all dealing with this, right? Like if I think something's boring, problem is that probably other people think it's boring, and I definitely relate to the PowerPoint thing. 7-point font, lots of bullets. It's like, especially as now I'm not telling any secrets here. Like, TechSmith is a company, right? We're like everybody else. We've got our challenges, and it cracks me up every time I see a slide like that, because I'm like, we have tools to make images that we could do better. So I love these ideas. I gotta imagine though that as you're going through this and you're trying to expand this and trying to help people to overcome this, there's got to be resistance, right? Because sometimes I'm guessing not everybody, but sometimes people hear the word play or they have fun, and it kicks off to something in the back of the neck, and they're like, I'm at work. I don't want to have fun, or we can't have fun. This is serious business, And I've worked for a pharmaceutical company, so I know what it's like in that environment. And it's like, we can't have fun here. It's, and again, there are serious things happening, and not everything can be fun. But how do you help people with that, kind of overcome the resistance if there's that kind of hesitancy? Because I do think people kind of get in a headspace of like, or they're just, maybe the apathy is kicked in, like, I'm sure you've seen it. I've done it before. So what advice would you give us there, Grant?
I almost feel like we should develop shirts that say having fun is serious business.
Yeah.
It's
serious
play with purpose. Yes. Play with purpose. I mean, what I would hear from folks is, okay, play, that's not serious, but that's how our brains learn. We're taught, why is it the things we're taught as kids are now bad as adults? I get so much good ideas in the workplace from play, where we have this safe space. I mean, this is when I played sports or I did certain competitions. In a way, a good part of that was teaching me how to work with others. And those things, it's just kind of it is crazy that companies don't think you need your play time as an adult. So what's the resistance? Well, it is that mentality. It is a mentality also, I don't have time for play. But that's the problem. It's like saying, I don't have time for exercise, or I don't have time to eat right. The whole point is what you do now, it carries over to these other places, because with play, you feel better about yourself. And when you do have stress, you're in a better place to handle it. Or you're not flying off the handle when somebody says something that rubs you the wrong way in a space, because that playtime conditions you for these things of how to handle yourself better. I mean, I like coming up with fun words for this, like funductivity. Like having fun is a great way to get things done. But I also come up with words to describe the problem, like burnt out-aholic, like the person who thinks that their identity is based on how long can I work till I collapse. It's crazy, because I worked at that place at an agency many years ago. The overnighters didn't do any good. You weren't working on the right things. It just made you more exhausted for the day. People were nastier to each other. These things don't work to try to remove play. It's one thing. if somebody feels like you're doing serious work and important work, but even people in jobs that are very serious need to have their playtime. They need to have perspective on things. It's like, why are you doing this? It's so that life can be enjoyable. And it's not the idea that, well, work should not be enjoyable, because you will have more energy. I mean, even people in sports understand this. I mean, we're not in the days of the early Soviet Union where everything must be strict on this whole regimen. Even athletes today understand that play time makes you better at the things that you consider serious. So yeah, serious play is a way to have fun and get things done.
I love it. And something that, having just had a very busy stretch, something I'm taking notes on for personal opportunities as well. I want to shift gears here kind of as we're getting wrapped up and we'll start moving into our speed run here soon. I want to talk about video for a second, because you're a video creator. You've created video. You've got a beautiful setup there. And I want to think about this from, we've talked a lot about this communication from your perspective, especially as we, start thinking about some of these problems and challenges we have. What role for you does video play in helping maybe alleviate, or could it help alleviate some of this maybe mundane kind of boring communication? And obviously you can make boring videos. I've watched them, I've made them. But any thoughts about how video might play into all of this?
No, I have no thoughts about it whatsoever. Can we end the interview? Just that's my sarcasm there. Okay. In truth, yes, I love doing video. Video is the most visceral communications medium we have today. And I was around from the beginning of it online when people were poo-pooing it in the SEO industry, to look how much value it has, with how much you can do both as a human and with AI, and combining those things. The last video I did, which was for a client on the subject of acronym in the event management industry, and doing video taught me on the importance of showing empathy, even for the people that you don't want to mock, but that some might consider the source of the problem. Like I mentioned, back to those people who speak in so many acronyms. But I then say, why is this a problem? There's a reason for these things happening. And when I could use video to show that empathy, just like my setting here, if people watch on YouTube, they can see I call this my dork dungeon with my little fun stuff all around the area. Is I want to make it comfortable and inviting. This is me. It's very easy for me to talk. I don't need an avatar. I don't need AI in there. It's fun to use, but how much more fun it is just to be yourself and warm, and to allow those first takes that are mistakes, because people say that's human, that's authentic. And I think it's too easy to rely on the AI right now. I think we just want to be approachable, be ourselves, because that builds trust. If I know something is artificial and synthetic, I've seen folks that would use these services of, okay, take a photo of me in 360, and when I'm talking to a microphone, then the scroll-like looking version of me will start mouthing that off. It's crazy to me, because it's like the whole point of this is trust, authenticity. I appreciate it more sometimes just to see a regular thing on a webcam than somebody doing a high production, especially when you're not reviewing video gear. That to me is important, just to show consideration for the audience of, I want to sound clear, and I want to take feedback, and I want to be there for the feedback. So the video to me is a way of how wonderful it is on a live stream of responding to people in real time. I love that. And of course, this comes down to people's comfort level. You don't have to do that all the time, but I will say, when there are folks who feel even scared about being on video, I tell them, do something back in the analog days of go to improv, watch if you're not yet comfortable, do the things old school, have a conversation, meet up for a group that isn't your group. Like last night, I went to a meetup on AI that was strictly on the engineering and financial side. I don't get involved with that stuff as much on understanding all the, how these things work to that degree of Python language, but I thought, why not? Because I think the whole thing is how to find something interesting that isn't already in your comfort zone. So I think we have to focus a little more on the organic. And when we have those awkward moments, that toughens us up for doing things on video. So I always encourage people, if you want to do a good video, put yourself out in the world in the organic space, and you'll feel more comfortable when talking into a camera.
I absolutely 100% endorse that, because I live my life pretty much feeling awkward all the time. So that's why I'm just comfortable, because it's like, it's no different. So, well, Grant, this has been a fantastic conversation, but we have we've got a few things we got to do yet, and we want to jump into it. So let's go into our speed round questions. Here we go. Okay, for those who are new to the show, if you haven't watched it before, speed round questions are meant to be quick, fast answers. We're going to get to know Grant a little bit more. Now, normally, we have a dice tower. We roll a die. I'm not in that space. I don't have a dice tower again, so boo, sorry, Grant. But I'm going to give you a choice, 1 to 12. You get to pick the question that you get to be, I torture you a little bit with. So which is the first one you'd like to have me ask you?
Oh man, you know what? I'm gonna turn this around. I'm gonna let you pick, Matt Pierce. Have you ever been asked to be the one to pick the questions? So
I used to pick the questions all the time, but now, that's why I went to a dice, because it's like, well, let's make this random.
I know. Let's take that out of the equation here. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna twist this around. You think of a number in your head that pops up, and then saying, okay. I'm gonna, and you know what? It doesn't even have to be any of the 12. It could be something totally different. As long as it's like, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? That might be a little weird. That might be a little smoking too much.
No, let's go with number. I don't know what question 10. I don't know how the questions memorized. So let's go with number 10. It's not rolled very often. So question number 10. If you had to shift careers and out of the world of what you've been doing, you've been, you've obviously done a lot of different things, as we read in your bio. If you could do anything, though, what would you do?
If I could do anything, I think I would enjoy doing cringe comedy. I do enjoy the stuff of like Tim Robinson's I Think You Should Leave. There was the cringe recently with Emily Stone and Nathan Felder. By the way, Emily is her real name. I like that kind of stuff. I like doing stuff that's a little Andy Kaufman style. Is this for real? I actually got to do that with a fun little video called How to Speak Exotic, where I played it straight on as the person, the sleazy salesperson, saying most Americans don't want to learn a second language. Why bother? Instead, just make certain things sound exotic. Like instead of saying, I'll have a salad, I'll have a salad. And the whole fun thing is getting people to think, is this guy for real? That's what I would do. So it would still be that kind of stuff. But I'm already getting to live the dream of helping people communicate better and have fun doing it by being a social wordsmith. But if something happened, said I could not do this anymore because Matt Pierce rolled a 10 in his head, then I think that's what I would enjoy doing, because comedy is a great way of being a creative communicator. And that's always going to stay with me.
I love that. And, obviously there's a lot that it takes to be able to do that. That's getting out of your comfort zone, and that's always good. Let's go with the next one. What's a piece of advice you'd give your younger self? If you could time travel and you got like just 30 seconds, but you had to give yourself a piece of advice, what would you tell younger Grant?
Okay, I would tell younger Grant, first I'd take him to a place by the lake. We'd sit down. I'd have this, this heart-to-heart talk with him. I'd say, Grant, tomorrow the Powerball numbers are... I mean, really, it's like I think about, okay, would it be, how old would he be? Because what if he's like 3? That's going to affect what I'm saying. Is my younger self from yesterday? That would be probably the best situation. But if I did have that solemn 30-second moment, I would just say, you will love and be loved. I mean, most of us, we just want to be loved and feel connected. And that's the kind of assurance where I don't want to tell people something, even my earlier self, because that might change the trajectory, and that Zen line of difference between knowing the path and walking the path and then second guessing yourself. But I think a lot of us want to feel loved, and we also want to find something we love and we care and find the joy on. So that would be serious Grant in this totally fantasy scenario. And again, I know if it's 3 or yesterday, but that's what I would say.
Great advice. And I think well worth remembering for today, but remember it tomorrow, right? Remember it tomorrow. So, okay, one last question here. What are we going to hit you with here? Let's go with this one. If you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and why?
I would go to Matt Pierce's headquarters and see if I'm right behind him, and then show up, and that would freak people out on this show. That would be weird. That's what I would do. But it's like, okay, the silly and the serious. I would go to Australia because that's one place I haven't been. That's where my late mom was raised. She was born in 1942, and her family fled England when bombs were hitting them. I kid you not, this is serious. And then in Sydney and Bondi Beach, and that's one place I haven't been and met relatives. I met relatives in England, on my dad's side in Indiana, so I've met everyone, but I haven't met people there. And I'd like to take my significant better, or as I call her, my spouse-ish, been together 15 years. I just come up with words for all types of things, including relationships, and that's one of the best ways to have something endearing, and that's between two people. And I would get to learn a little bit more of my story out there, and so I think that will actually happen on my bucket list in a couple of years. So the nice thing is, if there's someplace you want to go, why not make it happen?
Absolutely. Well, I love that, and I love the story that connects that reasoning all together. So, well, Grant, this has been fantastic, a fun conversation to have. If people want to connect with you, they want to learn more from you, where should they and how should they connect with you?
All right, 3 fun places. First is, hey, if you like made-up words for fun connections, then check out my book on Amazon, which is GRANTASMS, Creative Twisted Words for Cool People. I love helping people communicate better and have fun doing it. And this experience of doing a book the right way was a great way to share my story and not be boring, but also be joyful and meaningful and be also vulnerable. And I think I love hearing stories from other people about it. I'm so glad that I did it. And it's something that's just going to define me for life. Also, yes, of course, on LinkedIn. On my LinkedIn, on my featured area is a lot of these videos we've been talking about on these GRANTASMS, on me telling a story with video. And the last one was done in Camtasia. So you get to see how great that looks. Thank you, Camtasia folks. Thank you for the upgrade. Look at that. Woohoo! Can't wait to try out the AI feature. And also, I have a YouTube channel, and it is under my name, Grant Crowell, with 2 L's. And there's also a video on me explaining the story of GRANTASMS and how much I struggled with my ADHD, and to not know what you have for so long and to feel despair and hopeless, and then to get an answer and then realize, okay, now you know what you have. Now you got to work on it. And that was a long journey. And so my story is told in that book, and that's kind of like a short way of getting the story on why do we make up words? What is the benefits, how it gave me more meaning, and how it was able to be my unique differentiator. And that's why I call myself the social wordsmith. I love helping people communicate better and have fun doing it. Guess what? I don't have a website. I don't need one. Those things are a lot of freaking work. Maybe after I'm retired from this job.
Well, we'll make sure we post the links to those things in the stuff down below if you're watching on YouTube or down below the podcast. Grant, we end the show the same way every time. We like to ask our guests kind of to help us wrap things up. So, Grant, what is your final take?
Final take. Okay, final take for the show. I like to say, life is too important to be taken so seriously. Now, and by the way, if you're watching this at home or wherever, you get to see my smelly cat shirt. There's an actual place in Asheville, North Carolina, where they serve pretty good coffee. They got the name. So extra bonus, and you get to see Matt in his cool office, Camtasia shirt, Camtasia green light.
That's
Go
right.
TechSmith.
Well, Grant, I love that final take. Life is too short to be all serious and all boring. So we thank you so much for joining me here in our cool studio and in your cool studio. Appreciate you taking time today.
Thank you, Matt. It's been so much fun, and we got some stuff done.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, you heard it. There's a lot of great advice in this episode that you just heard. Now, here's the thing. Grant got to talk about that stuff. You can go watch other videos. He's got the great resources. But if you don't pick something to do, you're never going to get better. You're never going to be able to improve. You're never going to be able to change. You're never going to be able to do anything. You're always going to get what you always got kind of thing. So here's the challenge for the Visual Lounge for this week. Pick one thing that you heard today and try to apply it. See if you can take your communication from a little bit dull to a little bit less dull. Or go from, if you want to go all in, go from 100, kind of 0 to 100 and just make it happen. Have some time to play, have some time to slow down, really think about why you're doing the communication that you're doing, and take some time to make it better, because that's what we're all about, making communication, our videos, our visuals, all better, and we want you to succeed at that. So please take a little time to level up every single day. Thanks, everybody.